Okay, hello everybody. My name is Alison, and this is Alyssa Hawn. I'm Alison. I'm the founder of the Moms with IC support group, as well as Alison Coombs Wellness. And today we want to talk about holistic health and IC. So how your journey to remission can look using holistic health strategies. All right, and we have the lovely Alyssa Hawn here, and she is a health coach who supports people that have chronic illnesses, and she supports people that have IC because that is in that category. So I thought that she'd be a great guest to bring on here to share with you guys. So if you're here watching live or you're watching the replay, if you have questions, please type them in the comments below. Alyssa will circle back, or I'll circle back as well and just check what's there. And then we'll answer your questions. And at the end, we'll also put her information. So if you want to connect with her, then you can find that in the comment section below, as well as the YouTube channel as well. It will be there, so you can find her in either place there. So Alyssa, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey with IC, as well as what you do now for work.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a 33-year-old single mom. And I am a holistic health coach, which I wasn't always this before. I was a chef and I was doing marketing for a little while, but I had such a profound health transformation that I was like, I have to take what I learned and share it with the world. So my journey with IC, actually, it probably began when I was like a very young child, because I always had to go to the bathroom more than everybody else. So I was like a kid. They said I had tiny bladder syndrome. And that's what I thought. I thought I just have a really small bladder, and that's why I have to go to the bathroom every hour. And so I would, I just thought it was normal. I thought this was fine. But as I got older and I went to college, and I started becoming sexually active, I started getting UTIs like every month. And it just became so bad that I started to become resistant to multiple antibiotics, because I was on antibiotics all the time. And the more UTIs I got, the worse my bladder hurt. So I was in constant pain. I was going all the time. It was like an elephant was sitting on my bladder all the time. Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was bad. And I think I reached the point where I was about 24 years old, and I remember going to the doctor and him saying, well, I can just put you on antibiotics like constantly all the time. And I just remember feeling in my heart, this is wrong. This is not right. And so I found a chiropractor who put me on supplements to help with the pain, and they actually worked. But they only worked for a little while, right? So they managed my symptoms for a couple of years, and I still had, I would have flares, but my quality of life wasn't good. Like, I would travel and I would always be very like on high alert. Where is the nearest bathroom, right? I was very self-conscious. I would go out to dinner with people and I'd use the bathroom 4 or 5 times. Like, that's not a way to like enjoy yourself and live your life, right? But things for me, like I really tried to push the pain out of my mind as much as I could. I relied very heavily on things like alcohol, relationships with other people, finding ways to distract myself and not deal with the pain. And not just the pain of my bladder, but other things that were happening in my life. So I also had really bad osteoarthritis. I had chronic acne, which I managed for years with medication, but it would always come back. I was dealing with really serious trauma. I had experienced the death of my stepfather, the death of a partner. There was alcoholism in my family, and I didn't at the time see the connection between those traumatic things in my life and how I was feeling. I didn't associate, maybe my bladder pain has something to do with the fact that I'm burying so much trauma within my body.
That is true. There's so much connection within things that you don't think are connected. Like, so talk a little bit more about that connection. How did you come to make that connection that trauma could be associated with the bladder symptoms that you were having? What was your aha moment?
Yeah. So, I think I had a mini aha moment and then an aha moment much later down the road as I started my healing journey. But I think the first one was the first time I got pregnant. I had a miscarriage. I miscarried twins. And at the time I had been off alcohol for a while because when you're pregnant, you don't want to drink. And I realized I just had this feeling that something was wrong and that there was something deeper there. And so that was sort of a mini realization, but that I just pushed it away, right? As I usually did. And then I got pregnant again pretty shortly after that. And that was actually a beautiful time in my life because I was off the alcohol and doing things that were better for my body. And I started to feel better until my last month of pregnancy when it was just like all hell broke loose and I had the worst flare of my life. Like,
oh my goodness.
I went into premature labor 3 times that they had to stop because my body was just having like such an intense reaction to the pain in my bladder. I was on bed rest for a month. It was awful. It was probably the worst time of my life, or one of the worst times of my life.
Sorry to hear. I can relate. I see in pregnancy sometimes is either people go into remission or all hell breaks loose, and I can relate because I'm in the category of all hell breaks loose during my pregnancies. I get knocked out of remission every time.
You've had 3. Part of me, I think that's another trauma I have to deal with if I want to have another child. Like I was so scarred by that experience that I'm like, oh, I don't even know if I can do that again. It was that bad.
You forget, which is how I ended up with 3. And every time I'm crying on the couch, I'm like, why did I do this again?
I have not forgotten. It's been 2 years. It's still pretty fresh. Let me tell you, I had a 36 and a half hour labor where I'm pushing my 9-pound son out for 5.5 hours, like pushing without an epidural. Like it was a nightmare.
Oh my goodness.
But it's okay. Like I'm actually working through that trauma, now, but it's, like I'm joking and laughing about it, but there are these events that happen in our lives that we, try and push behind us but really they stick with us and our body like carries them. Right. And what's so interesting, one thing that I've learned about as a holistic practitioner is the chakra system. And I've learned that we hold emotions like fear in our sacral region where our bladder is. And so, once I learned that made so much sense to me. So
when you speak of fear, is this in the same category that as you would put in anxiety as well, because it's a fear-based sort of thing, or is anxiety held elsewhere? And is it what kind of fear? Is it like all fear, or what do you?
Oh, I think there are. I mean, I'm not an expert. I can't speak entirely to this, but I think they're similar, and I think there are they call them like the big 6 emotions, and it's like anxiety, fear, anger, shame, things like that are located in this area. But I'm, like I said, I'm not a total expert, but but I do resonate with that sort of like the mind body connection, different parts of our body will manifest pain, based on the emotions that we're feeling. So and I know this through my own work that this is true. Like this is very true. But, back to my story. So, luckily after I gave birth, my bladder got better. I don't think it could have topped the pain that I experienced with my heavy son sitting on it inside my body. Right.
Yeah.
So it got better. It wasn't great. I was still going to the bathroom a lot. Right. But at least it was some relief and I wasn't sleeping anyway, as I was trying to breastfeed. So, getting up in the middle of the night a bunch of times wasn't a big deal. But things started to get really bad for me after I stopped breastfeeding after 6 months. I didn't have a good breastfeeding relationship with my son. I tried super hard, but I was so ragged emotionally. I was, I had postpartum depression. I was very unhappy. My knees were killing me. I was like, I can't do this anymore. But right when I stopped breastfeeding, that's when my bladder went out of control again. And I was like, oh, I have a UTI. Absolutely. Because this is burning. This is pain. I go to the what do you call it? Like the urgent care, and I get tests and they're negative, and they refer me to a urologist. I have to wait a month and a half to see this urologist. During that time, I feel like I have a UTI for a month and a half. I go see the urologist. She puts me through all kinds of tests, right? And they're all coming back negative. Nothing is wrong. And she says, okay, well, I can send you to pelvic floor physical therapy, which was the best thing that she did for me as a urologist. She said, but I also can put you on Elmeron, which I'm sure many people are familiar with Elmeron because it helps with symptoms, but it also has some pretty serious side effects like vision loss, hair loss, depression. And, at the time I was like, I definitely don't need more depression on top of all the depression.
Yeah. Same reason why I declined Elmeron, the same reasons you just listed, the side effects. And I was like, I'm going to try to figure out something else. I'm not saying it's bad to be on any sort of med for sure, but it wasn't right for me. I was already bordering anxiety, depression, and all that when I was feeling my symptoms. So it wasn't right for me. Because if I got more depression, then I was already, borderlining that. Do I want to be in the world and exist, or do I want to come out of the world? I was, in that dark place. I can speak lightly of it now because it's been a while and I'm working through that. But I can relate to what you're saying about making the choice to, not want to take that.
Yeah. And what you said about, for some people, drugs save their lives. Like they can't feel it. But I knew in my heart, for me specifically, there was something else out there. And I remember leaving, I'd had the prescription, but I knew I wasn't going to fill it. And like, I went out to my car and I just prayed. Like, I didn't even really believe in God at the time. Now I have a much stronger spiritual, relationship, I guess, with the universe and with God. And but at the time I was like, just please guide me, please tell me what I need to do, because this isn't a life. This is awful. Like I wanted to die. I had a young son, I have a husband I was, emotionally feeling so distant from. Nobody could understand what I was going through. I didn't have a single person in my life who understood what it felt like to have to pee all the time. Like it's such a distraction from your daily life, right?
And people might just view it as they don't realize the pain associated too. So I think they don't realize that having to pee all the time is annoying. When you're on a road trip, you're constantly thinking about, am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it? Where's the next bathroom? Where, right? There's that aspect, and then there's like the intense freaking pain of burning and
on your bladder,
right? And then there's that too. Like I used to have this weird symptom of afterburn, I call it. So it's not even like when you're urinating. It's like an intense burning throughout everywhere after, and it would be like intense, and I had to lay down after. That used to be before, and I think about that. So people it's if you don't have somebody I think about the conversation me and Priscilla had yesterday, that we can really relate to one another, because that's why we have support groups like this, right? That I wish existed when I first was diagnosed, because you're right. It's so hard for people to really relate and understand what you're going through. They might think, oh, I've had a UTI and that's what it is, but it's so much more than that,
Right.
Sorry, carry on. I just had to.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's great. One person, I think in the IC Warriors group, described it as punishing me cruel. And that is such a perfect description. It feels cruel. Like why is this happening? But so I was in the car, prayed. About a week later, I stumbled upon a holistic health podcast where one health coach was interviewing another health coach. And it was an hour-long interview, and all they talked about was ways to improve your digestion. And it spoke to me. I was like, I have to keep listening. And so I listened to more episodes. So this podcast is called Learn True Health. And I realized that I am a huge science geek. I love the biology of the human body. I love physiology. I love the mental, emotional, spiritual health.
That's why we're friends.
Yeah.
I'm a geek too.
It spoke to me, and I'm like, this is amazing. I felt so called to be a health coach. A month later, I enrolled in the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and started a year-long program to get my health coaching cert. And about halfway through, as I was learning things, I was implementing them. And I was also, by the way, I was going to pelvic floor physical therapy, and my pelvic floor physical therapist actually became one of my best friends. Like, how cool is that? And then I found a naturopath instead of an MD. I looked online. Naturopaths look at the whole body. And she was able to tell me, you have the MTHFR gene mutation. You are not methylating your B vitamins. You need, more methylated B support. And as soon as she put me on this, it was like, boom, the lights went on, and I'm not saying everybody with IC has MTHFR, everybody is unique, everybody is different. But for me, that was like a puzzle piece that was missing that really helped me. So anyway, so on top of this, I'm learning things about holistic health, and step by step, I start implementing the things I've learned into my life. And not only did my IC get better, my osteoarthritis got better. Like, I could barely walk. Now I'm doing squats and lunges. And this is like a year and a half later. It's
amazing.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like, and my acne, gone.
Your skin is beautiful. It glows. It glows.
I can't believe it. Like, I'm just, I was just blown away just by doing things like nutrifying my body properly. That was a huge one.
And what is, elaborate on that? What does that mean, nutrifying the body?
So for me, well, one thing that I teach people is that food doesn't often have the level of nutrition that we expect it to have. And it's the way that our farming practices are now. Like, a lot of food in the grocery store, the food comes from farms where the crops, they're monocropped, so they're not getting the nutrition that they need. Farmers aren't putting the proper minerals that are needed in, because they're not necessary all the time for food to actually grow. So it's, in many cases, it's more cost effective to just not put those minerals in, right? So a lot of us are walking around minerally deficient. So we're not getting the vitamins, minerals that we need. We're often not getting the amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein, or fatty acids that we need for our cells to function optimally. So I went and I got another certification in supplementation, where I can look at people's symptoms and say, what nutrients are you missing in your body that can help you? And sometimes, it's B vitamins or magnesium or calcium. For many people, it's like all of them. Right. So that nutrifying your body, like, I think that was a key stepping stone, right, for me to take the next steps that I needed. Altering my exercise. Diet, by the way, diet was huge. Even though, I don't think food is as nutritious as it was 50 years ago, it still plays an incredibly important role. And
that's why I got a tower garden, right? Because then then the food's not traveling, right? It's from tower to plate, so it keeps all its nutrients, and you pick it when it's done, not early, right? So
right. And I think the tower gardens, they give you a solution that is very nutrient rich, so that you're giving your food the nutrition that it needs, that in turn is going to go into your body and fuel your cells. And that is tower gardens are an amazing option. And if anybody is interested in the tower garden, talk to Priscilla. Or not Priscilla.
I'm like,
talk to Priscilla too.
You can talk to Priscilla too. Priscilla's pretty awesome, right? But I don't think she doesn't know about the tower gardens yet. So.
No, talk to Alison, not Priscilla. Sorry, the three of us were talking yesterday, and so I think I have a mental association between the three of us right now.
It's mom brain. It's fine.
Right. If you want to know about Pilates, talk to Priscilla.
Yes, okay. That is true. Right, Pilates and IC and hyperpressives. Talk to Priscilla.
Yes, right. So, anyway, back to what we were saying. So food is incredibly important, right? Sourcing your food well, staying away from inflammatory foods, the most common ones being gluten, dairy, sugar. Those were tremendous. Some nutritionists do the elimination diet, which I think is great, working with the nutritionist to find what foods are triggering you, because they're different for everybody. Like there's an IC diet, but it's not always like one size fits all. So.
Yeah, for me, as I mentioned in my story, I never followed the IC diet personally, but it doesn't mean that it's not tremendously beneficial for some, right? Like I ate all throughout. I just would like, okay, I'm gonna eat tomatoes, and I learned a little tips like the yellow tomatoes don't have as much acid, I believe, as the red one. So if you can find a yellow kind of tomato instead or whatever, because there's different varieties of tomatoes with different acid levels and stuff, and just play around with growing your own versus what you can get in the supermarket. You might find things that you bake yourself or you grow yourself you can tolerate better than something that was, flown over and sprayed, because it could be a chemical, like, a certain chemical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And that's another thing that I implemented in my life, was living a low tox lifestyle. So getting rid of all of my chemical house cleaning products, my body products, things like lotions, makeup, shampoo, purifying my water. So I started small, because it's really hard to like upend your life and pay for all new low tox stuff. Like I recommend going step by step, right? So my first step with water was I started with a Brita, and eventually, as my budget allowed, I worked my way up to a Berkey water filter, which is excellent and makes like very pure water. So
what is a Berkey? Can you, what is that?
It's a type of water filter, and it has a fluoride filter in it that you can purchase, just so you can have like very purified water. It helps take out chemical compounds that are often found in our current like water supply, which they use to treat the water so that we don't get sick, right? So there's good things about it. Like there's good, like so that we drink tap water, we don't, like get listeria and die. But at the same time, you're getting these chemicals in your liver that slow down your liver, which you need to detox all of the garbage that's coming into your body unwittingly. Because now, just the way that our world is, we're exposed to something like 80,000 chemicals a day that are beyond control. Yeah. And the like, if you live in a city, imagine how much worse you are. Like, you're so lucky, Alison, you live in the country where it's cleaner and purer, right?
Yeah, I would say, because there's less people, right? Like, and stuff like that. So it's less cars, right? So there's less pollution, and you can country air, you sleep better.
Right. That's so true.
Also, there's this darker, like it's pitch black at night, right? So you sleep better. It's not all like the lights that come in, because lights affect sleep too, right? It's just dark, and you have that natural crickets kicker.
Yeah, that's like nature's lullaby. I love it.
Right. So yeah, definitely. So the Berkeley, is that something you fit underneath, or is it like a countertop thing, or
countertop thing? So it's Berkey, Berkey.
Okay.
Countertop water filter. You just like fill. I use a pitcher that I just pour water in the top every day, and then it filters it.
You're US, so I had to see if I never seen the brand here, so that's why I was asking more about it. I used to get one, Santivia, I think, from the health food store here. I don't know if you, and right now I'm just using Zero Water, because that's what there's no Healthy Planet. Like, I don't know if you even have that in the US, but there's none of that, like, right here where I live. I have to go back to the city to get to get one, and I don't want to drive that far. So when next time I'm in the city, then I'll see about the Santivia one. But I'll look for that too online and see if it's in Canada.
We can post a link too below the video too, so that everybody who's interested can see. But I really recommend it, especially if so many people don't realize too. We think because we have IC, the problems in our bladder. But I realized throughout my journey that my bladder was just a victim of these greater things happening in my body. What was going on with my liver? What was going on in my lungs and my heart? A lot of things that were a result of trauma that I was just burying in these organ systems, and then my bladder was the victim. you know.
I love that. I love that. I've never thought about it that way. It's like what, for example, when you're doing like self massage with the rolling, right? You can affect another tissue by rolling under or above that tissue, right? So I guess it's the same thing, right? Like the body is so connected, right? It's like
Mhm.
even think about pelvic health when you're sucking in your stomach. You know how like as women you taught like you want to have that flat belly, so suck it in, right? But that's affecting your pelvic floor. It's making it tighter, right? Like
Right.
because they're affected. You're pulling in your transverse, you're pulling in your stomach. Pelvic floor is tight. You gotta let it go, right? To let go
Yeah.
that pelvic floor, let go that jaw, to let go that they're all things are connected that you don't think are connected, right? So
Absolutely.
that's a really good point. It's the victim. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna borrow it.
Yeah.
I'll say that you coined it though. Alyssa Hawn
Yeah.
coined the bladder victim.
So I have to tell you, so I have a client that I see right now, and we're talking, and one thing that I've been working on with her is, instead of hating on your bladder or your body parts, being so frustrated with them, instead look at them like and say, oh, thank you so much. Thank you, bladder, for supporting me. I know that you are just a victim of of something else that's happening in my body. And I really appreciate you. And just reframing so that you can look at your body as something that's serving you, that is working for you rather than working against you, I think is
Mhm,
incredibly powerful. And that's
mhm,
something I do with all my clients, is the mindset piece, right?
mhm,
A lot of people are suffering, but you know what? Those negative thoughts create things like pain in our body and disease. The positive thoughts, things like gratitude, promote wellness and healing. And this is proven by science. Like, this is real. So
mhm.
and let me tell you though, getting out of that negative headspace is like way easier said than done, right? You have to really be dedicated to the practices to get to the other side.
That's where support comes in, to have like-minded people, or somebody that is a coach. I talked about that a little bit in that video I did with my story, looking for the evidence. So the people I interview is the evidence, like, Alyssa's evidence that you can get to remission, like anyone else that's in remission, like Lisa King and Rochelle from West Coast Mint. There's a lot of people. I'm probably forgetting because have mom brain all the time, but that's probably something Alyssa can help me with, the mom brain. But looking at evidence of, they're all in different kind of practices now, but they all made their way to their remission, right? Meaning that you can as well, which is a beautiful thing. So I'm always trying to kind of bring hope and that perspective, but surrounding yourself with like-minded people who also believe in remission is important, because what you continue to tell yourself is going to be your reality. So if you feed your mind where there is no such thing as remission, I cannot get to remission is not for me, that is true for you, because now you have told your mind and your body that. But if you can feed your mind and find those evidence of people that have done it, find people to support you, like-minded peers, and tell your mind, I got this. I can do it. Remission is for me. My remission is coming. Priscilla, in our conversation yesterday, our friend, she was talking about being in the shower and visualizing the water flowing from head to toe, right? And imagine the water is just cleansing her, and these powerful visualizations, and she says that this gives her moments of times where she's not in pain, and that is amazing. The mind, as Alyssa said, it's proven by science, is so powerful in our pain, how we experience pain in our pain journey. It's really, really, really important as well. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just talking from a holistic perspective, other things that you might want to consider, one thing that I do as a practitioner is, like, I dive into root causes. What is happening in your life that could be, triggering things like flares, right? And another huge one is trauma, right? Past trauma, and dealing with that past trauma effectively. It is so easy to bury it, right, in our bodies and think, oh, this is just something that happened in the past. But the truth is, like, these past experiences create limiting beliefs within us that prevent us from living a whole, purposeful, pain-free life. And to get past these limiting beliefs is so important and has been crucial for me in my healing journey and beyond. Like, yeah.
What's your opinion of you talk a lot about the past trauma, but what is your opinion of reoccurring trauma now? So say like you have you're at a job where you're not happy every day. You have to go 9 to 5. You have a crappy boss that's yelling at you, saying bad things. So what about situations like this, or your people in a relationship that doesn't serve them, abusive partner, so the trauma is reoccurring? So what about that daily? Can someone still thrive within an environment where, or it just takes a lot of undoing with mindset every day? Or what is your take on that?
So that's a great question. So I think that when you're confronted with those experiences, it's like a mirror telling you to look at something within yourself. And maybe it means it's time to go. It's time to walk away from this job and relationship. Or it's something that there's some experience within you in the past that is causing you a deep-rooted sense of shame. Right? That's the universe prompting you to deal with it. And there are several ways to deal with it, right? Things like journaling, putting your body into a relaxed parasympathetic state, the rest and digest state, where you feel safe.
Self-hypnosis, essentially, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I know I'm like listing these things and you're like, where do I even start? Right?
So give us like a where would somebody start? So like today they're diagnosed with IC, right? So what are your kind of what should they be looking at first, second, third? Because I think 3 digestible steps would be really helpful for people that are just getting started.
Great question. I think the first step is finding your team, finding people who are going to support you through this. And that might be, really empathetic friends or family, as that base support, your everyday, you got this support, but also finding practitioners that you resonate with. So be it a health coach like me, a naturopath, a pelvic floor specialist like you, Alison. And I think, for me, I got my pelvic floor therapist. I had my naturopath. I had a health coach, and my health coach is now my mentor. So she helps me, as I am, because I'm pretty new still, right? Like if I have a question, like I go to her. But, just creating a team of people who are going to be on your side and guide you through this and hold you accountable for those step-by-step improvements that you need. So I'd say, like, number 1, build a team. And I know finances play a role in this, but I will say this, I probably spent about $10,000 on my health last year. But like, if you could have seen me back then and see me now, I am a completely different person.
But either way, I think you can invest in your health in either prevention, right, or maintenance of remission or getting to remission. So you can invest that way. Or you can invest in the continued cost of things snowballing, right? So it can snowball where it's like, okay, now, IC sometimes occurs with something else. So now you have IC, now you have IBS, now you have fibromyalgia, now you have Crohn's, now you have Raynaud's, now you have, right? It can snowball, and then that same $10,000 is maintaining these illnesses, right? Or, helping you to manage symptoms, or you can spend the same money getting to root cause and going to remission. So
100%.
Perspective.
and I will say this, it won't cost $1,000 because I spent money on educational certifications. So if that's not what you want to do, then you can save a bunch of money that way and just learn from me or, whoever you want to work with. But I imagine finding somebody to be on the journey with you and who resonates with you, I think is really powerful. So that would be my step 1. My step 2 is nutrition. Like, get your cells fully optimized, get your body the nutrition that it needs, because without it, you cannot function to do all of the other things that I mentioned, like dealing with trauma, getting into the parasympathetic state, those things are going to be harder. if you're not nutrified.
I know you talked earlier with nutrition about cutting out inflammatory sorts of foods, right? So you that probably looks like sugar, as you said, gluten, dairy, sometimes
Processed foods,
alcohol, processed foods,
alcohol,
um, some kind of processed chocolate that's not pure, right? Like can be triggering to IC, right? As well. So with that, do you have a ratio? Is it like a 80% eat healthy, 20%? Like I don't know, when I work with
yeah, great
as
question.
in a personal training kind of capacity, you kind of give people a 90-10 or 80-20 depending on their individual needs. Or for IC when you're healing, is it good to stay mostly compliant with good nutrition because there's already a stress on the body?
So I think for me, supplementation really helped here because it helped, like it just, when there were gaps, it filled them in, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't able to get it from food, I knew I was getting it from my supplements. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was important. But let me say one thing about supplements. I think that we put way too much emphasis on things like herbs and aloe, which are so helpful. And like, that's what I was on for a long time to
Mm-hmm.
manage my symptoms. But ultimately, that's not what your cells are craving. Your cells are craving vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, bioflavonoids, antioxidants. That's what your body actually needs to function. It's not it's not missing herbs, right? It's not missing medication. Those things are incredibly helpful. And I think that like many doctors are like over prescribing things to put out fires instead of actually like laying the solid foundation for your cellular health. So supplements, but with food, it kind of depends. The way I work, it depends on where the person is at. If this person is a busy mom and a business owner, like she needs something quick, right? But on the other hand, if I'm working with somebody and they're like, I am so desperate, I am suffering so much, I will do anything, then we will go hardcore, and we will cut out, we will do elimination diet because that's what that person is needing at that time. So it's really, the way I work is I really respond individually to people's needs. What do they need? What feels right for them? Some people want me to tell them what to do, but then others will know if I make a suggestion, that's not going to work for me. And that's fine. Like, tell me, because my whole purpose is to help you reach your goals.
In a way that empowers them, right? To be a steward of their own sort of health, right? So, which is amazing. All right.
You heal yourself, right?
Yeah. You're your best health advocate, right? Like, which is amazing. Is there anything else before we wrap up that you want to add?
Yeah, sure. I'll just say a little bit about if you're interested in working with me, I offer free 15-minute consults to see if I think we would work well together, and if I can actually help you. So if you want to check out my website, it's www.alyssahawn.com. You can read more about my story. I have some resources on there. So recipes that helped me a lot during my recovery from IC. Information about gluten, information about blood sugar. One thing we didn't talk about today was blood sugar imbalance, which I think is a huge contributor to IC symptoms.
So speak on it a bit before we wrap up. Then that's like the last thing we'll talk about, and then we're gonna.
Sure.
My kids are being really good, but who knows? They're gonna burst it at any minute.
Sure. So the thing about blood sugar, as we age, especially as women, when we hit around like age 35, 40, or even earlier, first let me talk earlier. Our diet today, our standard American diet, our standard Canadian diet is full of processed foods, full of sugar that are spiking our blood sugar. And what happens is our cells become less sensitive to insulin. Our blood sugar skyrockets. And what are some effects? Inflammation, like maybe inflammation in the bladder. Frequent urination is another one. That's another side effect of blood sugar that isn't talked about. Cravings for sweets, fatigue. These are symptoms that people with IC face all the time, right? So once I I didn't mention this, but part of my diet change was getting my blood sugar under control. And when I got that under control, my IC symptoms dropped tremendously. They weren't all the way gone at that point, but it helped so much. Right. So, but as we age, once we reach the age of like 35, 40, that's when our cells really become insulin resistant, because our progesterone and estrogen levels start to drop. Those are the hormones that help with insulin production. So, we aren't taught this. Women are not taught this, right? We're just taught, take this birth control, it'll help. Take this, this progesterone cream, it'll help, but we're not taught why or the other effects that it has on our bodies.
Yeah, blood sugar management is so important I know a lot of people with IC, I've seen in the groups, they also, even with weight management, it's really important to manage the blood sugar as well for that. And, because if you're insulin resistant, then it can lead to diabetes later on. So you want to kind of get that under control before, you have something else chronic to manage, right? With diabetes and stuff like that. So blood sugar management is so important. And sometimes eating healthy foods but not balancing it, right? As you know already, Alyssa, it's not helpful. It's like some people make a whole fruit smoothie and that's it, but they don't balance the smoothie, right? So then you spike, you come back down, you're hungry in an hour, right? Because it wasn't a balanced blood sugar sort of smoothie. So even something that, I ate an apple and then, now I ate a ton of junk because it skyrocketed and went back, crashed down because the apple wasn't balanced, right? You didn't balance it with like a protein or healthy fat or whatever.
Yes, PFF, protein, fat, and fiber.
Yeah.
Like when you have IC, those are like the three things you want to focus on getting, not sugar, like protein, fat, healthy fat. Healthy fats are things like avocados or nuts or olive oil.
That's true. And if you're managing your weight, then get it from whole food. So you might want to cook with less oil instead of more. Yeah, so you can saute in water. You can saute with like a vegetable stock instead, right? If weight management is on your mind as well. Because if you have like, a larger kind of BMI or anything like that, it can be putting also pressure on the bladder as well. So that's an area that you may want to look into if you're interested. That's because IC is different puzzle pieces, so it can be that contributing as well.
Right. We are all different, right? Our root causes are all different, but we are all in common because our bladders are all the victim of what is going on in our bodies, right?
Yeah.
So if you want some help figuring it out, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have a discussion, or even if you don't work with me, just to point you in the right direction.
Thank you so much, Alyssa, for your time today. I think this was such a fascinating, interesting sort of conversation, and I hope to have you back again. And we can pick a specific topic next time to dive deeper into, because I really, really enjoyed this conversation with you. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll put all your links below as well. So pop them in when we're off where people can find you. And as I said, this video will also be up on YouTube. And as well, so you can rewatch it there. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the comment or send Alyssa a message or myself a message, and I'll make sure to pass on the question to her. But thank you for listening, and have a fantastic day.